the Dullahan. The ladies negotiated the rolling green North York Moors with great expectation. They have been backpacking across Europe for the last 4 weeks and plan to spend the last leg of their trip in the town of Wilby. Their party is 4 strong and all plan on beginning their final semester of university after the holiday break. There is a mystique about Europe, the old country. The travelers each relished the cobblestone roads and cathedrals, predating anything in America by hundreds of years. The beauty, they understood, was in its history, and England did not disappoint. The moors of North York in October is breathtaking. Albeit foggy and wet, the temperature was brisk, and the scenery was like a dream. Jesus, how much further until town? I need a beer, Sally said. We should be there in less than an hour, Alison replied. I don't think it's very big, but they should have a pub at least. Oh, I hope so. I could go for a pint and some food, Laurie joked. Yeah, I could use a hot shower, Nancy quipped. We should really consider getting a room. Come on, Nance, don't you want to tell your grandkids you slept out on the moors? I would much rather tell them all about the room service. Well, this is a small village, I doubt they will have any of those amenities. A hot and a cot works for me. What's the name of this town again? Wilby. We should see the steeple of the cathedral just over these hills, based on this map. So are you guys psyched about the new Lennon album coming out in November? How did I not know about this? Perhaps if you spent less time with your nose in those books you would have heard about it, Laurie. Hey, what time is it? Time to eat. It's 4:15. We should be there soon. Look, see the church, wow. Wish it was a Marriott. Quit it with the room service, Nance. I'm just saying a girl isn't built for all this outdoor or sea shit. We have our limits. I practically grew up outdoors, Alison said. Well, that explains a lot. Fuck you, Sally, Nancy said with her middle finger extended. Ooh, baby. The girls laughed as they passed the church, marveling at its charm. The road soon presented the cottages and old storefronts of Wilby. They adored its historic character and wondered how much it might have changed over the centuries if it had at all. Nancy was thinking no such thing when her eyes locked on their hitch and pony, which had the unmistakable look of an old pub. She broke away from the group as if on autopilot, and when the others noticed her direction, they too followed. The doors opened and the few patrons that were within stopped and looked over at the girls. Everyone was silent. The Americans confidently smiled as they made their way to an empty table across from the bar. The waitress was at the table with menus and Nancy wasted no time, quickly ordering a round of beer for them. The girls felt uneasy as all the regulars remained silent and they could feel their eyes upon them as they ate. But they did their best to enjoy the time. What is wrong with these people? It's like they never saw a tourist. Laurie said with confusion. Want to see their heads really explode? Hey, does anyone know of any lodging in town? Nancy asked. Sure, there's Colin's Manor just up the road, the waitress replied. That's full up. I'm afraid you lot will have to get a room in Weir Lake, next town over. It's getting late. Surely we can accommodate the ladies here, the waitress proclaimed. Everything is full, Pearl, the patron replied with authority. It's only a few miles from here. If you leave now you will be there before nightfall. Yeah, that sounds like a plan, Alison said turning to her group. Let's get started. They followed her lead, exited the hitch and pony, and began their quest to Weir Lake. You lot should feel ashamed for what you've done. You know what tonight is. How could you let them leave? Asked the waitress. Come off it, Pearl. You know as good as anyone that it doesn't matter. Half of everyone in York have gone, and if it's your time no matter where you are. Hell, we are all that's left for this godforsaken town. We either saved their lives or we saved ours, another man said ominously. The girls walked to dusk and left Wilby far behind, but they were not any nearer to Weir Lake. Well, ladies, we are losing light. "I say we just set up camp here and head into town in the morning," said Sally. "Oh, come on. What does the map say?" asked Nancy. "It doesn't look all that close. I think that guy was bullshitting us," Allison said. "I agree with Sally." Nancy did not argue, she was too tired. They pitched their tent and got a fire going just as night fell over them. It was a large enough moon to throw some light upon the moors. They were settled in when it began. The neighing of a distant horse was eerily carried upon the cold air. The girls hushed and listened, trying to figure out if it was getting closer or further away. Then they could faintly hear the sound of a wooden carriage, no doubt being pulled by this horse. The clanking and creaking were barely audible over the drops of rain now beginning to fall. The girls pulled a flashlight from one of the packs and nervously began to scan the area, seeing nothing. "What the fuck is this? One of these local assholes trying to scare us?" "No, why?" They heard the scream of the horse, and it sounded very close. The girls grabbed their packs and took off on the road headed back to Wilby. Though no one said it, they each thought if all else failed, they could always spend the night in the old church. And within no time they were in front of the church, lungs burning. The doors were locked, but they could see candles lit within. Their calls fell on deaf ears. So they made their way to the back to see if they could find an open window, anything. The door here was also locked. In the distance, one of the girls could have sworn she heard a neighing horse. They turned as lightning struck and the form in front of them was illuminated. The girls cried out but quickly realized that this was their waitress. "What happened? Are you all right?" "We were outside of town, camping, when this horse and carriage scared the living hell out of us. We didn't know what to do other than run back to where we knew." "Oh girls, I'm so sorry," the waitress said as she quietly knocked upon the back door of the church in code. The door was unlocked, and based on what the Americans could hear, also unshackled, and it opened. They all entered and the girls recognized pretty much everyone there as being from the Hitch and Pony. There were also a few new faces. "What's happening out there?" a man asked nervously. "What are they doing here?" asked another man, speaking of the Americans. "They were spooked by the Dullahan and ran back here, and I for one don't blame them." "What? You saw the Dullahan and you led it here?" "I don't even know what that means," screamed Nancy. "They only heard it rattling about in the distance, no telling where it might be," Pearl said. "What about the rest of town? Are we all there is?" "I think so. I was up and down and every home was as quiet as a cemetery." "Does anyone have any weapons?" "Can someone please tell us what the fuck is happening?" asked Sally. They all went silent as they could hear the roar of the carriage outside the consecrated walls. It was tearing down the main street, the horse screaming. Nancy ran over to a window and spied the thing. The horse and carriage were dimly lit by the moon as it came to a halt. It looked weathered, eerie. The horse, she could see, was almost skeletal, but this couldn't be. Its flesh was missing from much of its body. She saw the driver, but it began up the road before she could see him. "Come away from that window, child," the waitress said. Nancy did so and appeared to be in shock. She was still trying to process what this was she saw. "What did you see, Nancy?" "The Dullahan," said one of the men. "Tonight it rides, looking for souls to take. We must try and be as quiet as possible and stay here. This is our best shot at surviving the night." They all huddled in the center of the church and waited nervously. They were 20 strong and still felt completely powerless. If it broke through the front door, they were to run out the back door. If it came through the back door, the reverse. It was unspoken, but each resident of Wilby present knew that if their hideout was discovered, it was everyone for themselves. It was about survival. Why they didn't leave like the rest of York, they couldn't say. The Dullahan wasn't going to necessarily rampage through their town. It wasn't necessarily going to even show. For most, this would be their first night of tribulation. But for a couple, They have already lived through a Halloween night like this. And perhaps that success, living, fueled their false sense of confidence. They could hear the carriage at times as it made its way around town. It was as if it circled the church, saving the best for last. The Americans were almost paralyzed with fear. If we have to escape, stay close to me. I will get us somewhere else, somewhere safe, Pearl told the girls. Some of the men couldn't stand the anxiety of not knowing and broke from the group to peer out windows. One man was carefully looking out the side window and saw nothing. Another man looking out the back window and saw only the horse and carriage. I see the carriage, he whispered. The Dullahan is not with it. The rain was more steady. The thunder rolled and lightning crashed, surely camouflaging its movement. The lightning lit up the sky as the front doors of the church exploded inward. There stood the Dullahan, an imposing figure in a tattered black cloak. In its hand, it wielded a whip of what looked like bones, human bones. And to the Americans' absolute terror, the figure stood without a head. It moved forward with the screams of those residents scattering within. The Dullahan cracked its whip of human bone and it lashed out, slashing through the neck of its closest victim. The body hit the floor with a terrible thud as it moved forward. People were crowding the door, all trying to get it open as the Dullahan took out another from behind. The girls watched in horror as they saw the bodies hit the floor of the church, each wondering if it would be pain when their time comes. A hand reached over and startled Laurie out of these thoughts as they ran out the back door. The horse of rotting flesh and bones jumped upon its hind legs and looked frightful as they ran past it and into the dark of night. Pearl made good on her promise, leading the Americans to a cottage not too far from the carnage at the church. They ran up to the attic and from this vantage point could see the aftermath. The Dullahan was loading the corpses onto the back of the old wooden carriage, one by one. They watched as a man ran out onto the road, took aim, and opened fire on the thing. Each round seemingly hitting its target. But after only a few moments the Dullahan was back up and the man frantically reloaded his pistol. The headless thing cracked its whip of bone and slashed him open at the belly. His entrails spilled upon the road as he fell dead beside the heap. Sally got sick from the sight as it loaded this victim upon the carriage. Let us pray that there are plenty of victims between us and it so that we might be spared, Pearl said coldly. But the girls understood. What else could be done against something like this? They watched it enter a couple more cottages and come out carrying more bodies, hastily throwing them on the growing pile. It turned and faced the cottage, which the girls were hiding. They watched it stand there for what seemed like forever until it climbed upon the decrepit carriage and took the reins. They watched as it led the horse down the main road and out of Wilby.